Maya walked into the Grand Oak Hotel ready to check in for what was supposed to be a smooth and simple stay. She had a reservation, and this hotel was exactly where she needed to be for an important business meeting the next day. But as soon as she reached the front desk, everything changed. The receptionist, a young woman with a tight smile, looked Maya up and down as she approached. The glance was quick, dismissive, and very telling. Maya knew she was being judged, but she had no idea how far it would go. "I'm here to check in," Maya said, offering a polite but confident smile. "Reservation under Maya Williams." The receptionist barely spared her a second glance before tapping away at the keyboard, her fingers moving quickly, clearly expecting the usual check-in process. A few seconds later, she stopped typing, her expression hardening. She stared at Maya with a faint sneer. "We don't have a reservation under that name," she said coldly, not bothering to mask her disdain. "I think there's been some mistake." Maya's face fell. "That can't be right," she said, pulling up her phone with the confirmation number. "Here it is. Maya Williams booking number." She trailed off, holding out her phone. The receptionist barely glanced at it. "This hotel doesn't take reservations from people like you," she said dismissively, her tone dripping with superiority. "We cater to a different clientele." Maya's stomach twisted with anger. "Excuse me, people like me," she asked, her voice rising with disbelief. The receptionist's eyes narrowed as she looked Maya up and down once again, her lip curling in judgment. "Yeah, people who don't fit the standard, you don't belong here," she said, her voice laced with mockery. Maya felt a rush of heat flood her cheeks. She was being judged based on her appearance alone, dismissed as if she didn't have the right to even stand in the lobby of this luxurious hotel. She could feel the sting of humiliation spreading through her. "What do you mean?" "I don't belong here," Maya asked, trying to hold her composure but feeling the anger building. The receptionist sneered. "Exactly what I said. You don't look the part. You don't belong in a place like this," she said, her eyes scanning Maya's simple black dress. "Maybe you should try a cheaper hotel. There's a motel down the street, they'll take anyone." Maya's breath caught in her throat, her hands clenched into fists. Was this really happening? Before Maya could respond, the receptionist's gaze shifted past her, and she nodded. "Security," she called out loudly, clearly aiming to make an example of Maya. "Please come here and escort this lady out." Maya turned just as two large security guards appeared at the door. The receptionist stood up almost smug, pointing at Maya. "Please escort her out." She repeated, her voice colder than ever. Maya's heart raced as the security guards advanced. She could feel her body tense up, but something inside her snapped. She wasn't about to let them push her around. She stood tall, locking eyes with the receptionist. "Are you seriously calling security to remove me?" Maya asked, her voice sharp, her anger simmering just below the surface. One of the guards stepped forward. "Ma'am, you'll need to come with us," he said, his tone not asking but commanding. They moved closer, reaching for her arms. But Maya wasn't going anywhere without a fight. "You've made a huge mistake," Maya said, her voice a low growl. She pulled away from the guard's grip, standing firm. "I'm not leaving until I speak to someone who actually knows how to treat their guests." The receptionist smirked. "Take her out. She doesn't belong here." The security guards reached for Maya again, but before they could get any closer, she took a deep breath and spoke in a voice that cut through the tension in the air. "I'll walk out, but you'll regret this," Maya said, her voice calm but filled with undeniable power. She gave one last glare at the receptionist, who looked shocked at Maya's composure. Without saying another word, Maya turned and stormed out of the hotel. The security guards followed her out the door, but Maya was already out on the sidewalk, walking away with her head held high. As the doors slammed behind her, she was seething, but she wasn't beaten. This wasn't over. Maya knew exactly what she was going to do next. They had underestimated her, and now they were going to pay for it. 1 hour had passed since Maya was harshly dismissed from the Grand Oak Hotel, humiliated, and shoved out the door like an unwanted guest. But, as the cold night air hit her face, something inside her shifted. What had started as embarrassment quickly transformed into a burning determination. No one, especially not some snide receptionist, was going to treat her this way. Not now. Not ever again. Maya stood on the street corner for a moment, feeling the weight of her own anger. She thought about just walking away, letting it go and finding another place to stay. But then she laughed bitterly to herself. She wasn't the type to let anyone get away with this kind of disrespect. She could feel the eyes of the people around her as she walked out of the hotel lobby, but none of them had any idea who she really was. With a deep breath, she turned back to the Grand Oak. The hotel that had just humiliated her was about to witness a whole new side of her. Maya wasn't someone who backed down, not when it came to making sure she was respected. She walked back toward the doors of the hotel, the high heels of her black dress clicking sharply on the pavement. She felt a sense of power rising within her as she approached the entrance. This time, it wasn't about a simple check-in. No, Maya was walking into that hotel with a purpose to show them exactly who they had dismissed. The second time around, they were going to learn exactly who was in charge. As she entered the lobby, she didn't flinch at the marble floors, the chandeliers hanging from the high ceilings, or the polished wooden counters Maya had seen luxury before. But what was happening now was about to be a whole new kind of experience for them. The receptionist, still at her station, looked up as Maya walked in. This time, her face showed not the smug expression of superiority, but a flicker of surprise. She hadn't expected Maya to return, let alone walk in with that cold, unshakable confidence. The receptionist's eyes widened as she saw Maya approach. "You again," she said, her voice shaky. The fear was there now, something Maya had wanted to see since the first encounter. "Yes, me," Maya replied calmly, her voice almost too soft, like the calm before a storm. She stood tall, making sure the woman could see her composure. "And I'm here to see the manager." The receptionist hesitated. "I'm afraid the manager's busy," she said clearly, trying to deflect, but Maya wasn't buying it. "Call him." Maya said, her tone no longer polite, but commanding. The receptionist, caught off guard by Maya's presence and assertiveness, stammered before reluctantly dialing the manager's extension. Within minutes, the hotel manager appeared. He was a well-dressed man in his mid-40s, his face the picture of professionalism. But as his eyes landed on Maya, they flickered, recognizing her from earlier. He hesitated for a moment, perhaps recalling the earlier incident, but quickly put on his best customer service smile. "Good evening, ma'am. I'm so sorry for the trouble you've encountered. How may I assist you?" His voice was dripping with practiced politeness, but Maya wasn't fooled. She could see the underlying nervousness. The receptionist was still standing behind the desk, her face pale and anxious. Maya could tell she had already made her way to the back office to gossip about the situation. Maya didn't waste any time. "You're going to want to hear what I have to say very carefully," she said, cutting through the pleasantries. "You see, I'm the owner of this hotel." The manager blinked, clearly. not expecting those words. "Excuse me," he asked, his eyebrows raising. He glanced over at the receptionist, who seemed to pale even more. The manager's eyes flickered back to Maya, still unsure how to handle the situation. "I'm the owner," Maya repeated slowly this time, with emphasis. She reached into her purse and pulled out a folder, opening it to reveal legal documents and the official ownership papers for the hotel. The manager looked at the documents in disbelief. His face shifted from confusion to panic as he quickly flipped through the papers. This can't be right. You're not. You don't look like—" The manager stumbled over his words, his voice faltering as he looked at Maya's simple black dress. Maya's smile was cold-cutting. "Is that really how you think this works? That it's all about looking the part? What, because I'm not dripping in designer brands, I'm not worthy of being here?" The manager opened his mouth to protest, but no words came out. He seemed paralyzed by the reality of the situation. Maya, however, wasn't about to let him off the hook. "You've been treating me like a nobody for the last hour," she continued. "You've been rude, dismissive, and downright disrespectful. But now I'm here to make sure you understand exactly who you're dealing with." Maya could see that the manager was still in shock. The receptionist, watching from behind the desk, looked utterly mortified. Maya was in control now, and she knew it. "I'm here to buy everything in this hotel," she said bluntly. The manager's eyes nearly popped out of his head. "What do you mean?" he asked weakly, trying to regain his composure. "Buy everything? I don't understand. I want to purchase every single item in this hotel," Maya said again. "The decor, the stock in your boutique, the furniture, everything. I'm going to pay for it all in cash right here, right now." The manager's jaw dropped. That's ridiculous," he muttered clearly, still trying to process what was happening. Maya ignored him. "I'm going to purchase every single item in your stock, and I'm going to do it with the same money you thought I didn't have. And then I'm going to change this hotel. I'm going to show you how you treat people who walk through those doors, and you will never ever treat someone like me the way you just did again." The manager was speechless. His face was flushed red, his mind clearly racing to figure out what was happening. The receptionist had already disappeared, likely to call the higher-ups, as the situation was escalating beyond their control. With a deep breath, Maya waited, poised, her calm demeanor now a sharp contrast to the chaos she had just unleashed. She knew this was just the beginning. She had the power, she had the money, and now she was about to take full control. The moment the hotel manager realized that Maya was the owner, everything about the situation changed. His shock was palpable. His mouth opened, but no words came out. Maya stood before him, unwavering, while he struggled to process the magnitude of her statement. The once cool and composed manager, who had probably thought of himself as someone with authority, now looked small and out of his depth. His once sharp, polite demeanor had completely unraveled, revealing just how fragile his confidence truly was. Maya didn't break her gaze, but she could feel the power shifting in the room. She was no longer just a disgruntled guest demanding a resolution. She was the storm they never saw coming. And she wasn't finished. "I'm not just here to talk," Maya said, her voice low but forceful, leaving no room for argument. "I'm here to take control. You've humiliated me in front of your staff, your guests, and you thought I was just another unworthy guest. Well, you're going to learn exactly who I am. And more importantly, you're going to understand how it feels to be dismissed." The manager opened his mouth to speak, but Maya raised a hand, silencing him instantly. She wasn't interested in hearing his excuses. This wasn't the time for apologies, or for him to explain how this wasn't personal. What she was about to do was personal, and it was going to change the way this hotel operated. Starting now, I want to make something clear. Maya continued pacing slowly in front of the manager's desk. Her voice remained calm, but there was a quiet, commanding strength to her words. I'm going to buy every single item in this hotel's boutique, every piece of decor, every piece of furniture in this lobby. All of it, and I'll pay for it in cash. I want it all. Do you understand? The manager blinked rapidly, trying to process the sheer audacity of what she was proposing. Buy everything. But that he started, his voice faltering. Yes. Maya interjected, her tone cutting through his disbelief. You heard me. I'm going to purchase everything you have here. Every single thing, and I'll do it in cash. No strings attached, no payments deferred, no, can we work something out? Just cash. Right now. The manager's face turned pale. But that's impossible. That would be a huge amount of money. We can't. You can, Maya said firmly, interrupting him once again. She didn't need to hear the excuses. I'll have my assistant process the transfer immediately, and when everything is signed over to me, I'm going to make some changes around here. I'm going to make sure you and your team understand what it means to treat every guest with respect, no matter how they look or how they dress. She paused, letting the weight of her words settle in the room. The staff, who had been watching the scene unfold, were now nervously shuffling in the background. The receptionist, still standing at the front desk, looked between the manager and Maya, clearly unsure how to react to the unfolding drama. Maya could feel the eyes of the other guests as they quietly watched the scene play out. They weren't sure what was happening, but they could feel the tension building. Maya had taken control. And now, they were all witnesses to it. The manager finally found his voice, though it was strained. I don't know what to say, but this isn't normal. We don't do transactions like this. I mean, this is a hotel, not some retail store. Maya smiled. You're right. It's not. But you know what? Maybe it should be. Maybe it's time for this place to realize that the people you think are unworthy of your service are the very people who make your hotel run, and you're about to learn that lesson. She paused for a moment, considering her next words carefully. I want every single item to be processed. I want this hotel to change. And I'm going to be the one who decides what that change looks like. The manager stood there completely dumbfounded, his face drained of color. He was a manager in charge of a prestigious hotel, and yet here he was, powerless against the woman standing before him. She wasn't asking for a refund, a discount, or even an apology. She was demanding control over the very space he had once thought was his. I'll get the paperwork started, he muttered, looking over at the receptionist. But Maya could see that he was broken. He had no idea how to handle this situation. No one had ever dared challenge him like this. He had expected her to back down, to accept the humiliation, and walk away. But Maya wasn't that kind of woman. She wasn't here to make peace. She was here to take what was hers. And then some. As the manager fumbled with his phone, calling someone to get the process started, Maya turned to the receptionist, who was now standing awkwardly behind the desk. You? Maya said, her voice cold. You're the one who dismissed me. You're the one who thought you could decide who deserves to be here. You're the one who made assumptions about me based on my appearance. Do you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to make sure your attitude changes, because you are not in charge here anymore. The receptionist shifted uncomfortably, her face flushed with embarrassment. She looked like she was going to say something, but the words didn't come. Maya wasn't interested in excuses anymore. The damage had been done. She didn't need their apologies. What Maya needed now was action, and she was going to make sure that action was felt all the way through this hotel. The manager came back with the paperwork looking like a deer in headlights. "I've contacted the higher-ups," he said, his voice trembling. "They'll process it, but I have to warn you, this is unusual." "Unusual," Maya repeated, her voice a low growl. "You think what's unusual is me taking control. What's really unusual is your treatment of your guests. That's what's been unusual this whole time." She took the papers from the manager, signing them with a steady hand. The receptionist stood silently behind the desk, watching as Maya completed the transaction. There was no turning back now. Maya wasn't just making a statement, she was taking the reins of a system that had treated her and others like her as less than. "I want to make sure your team is trained in humility." Maya added, her eyes narrowing as she looked at the manager. "I want you to make it clear to everyone here that no one gets to decide who belongs and who doesn't. I don't care how much money you think someone has. Everyone deserves the same respect." With that, Maya turned and walked out of the lobby, her head held high. She knew that the Grand Oak Hotel would never be the same again. She had walked in as a guest, but she was leaving as the one who had claimed it. As she exited through the grand doors, a new sense of satisfaction washed over her. She had done what she came to do, and she was just getting started. The next few days were a whirlwind of changes at the Grand Oak Hotel. Maya's bold actions had set the wheels in motion for an overhaul that no one had anticipated, least of all the staff who had treated her with disdain. As the hotel staff scrambled to adjust to the new reality, the transformation was nothing short of dramatic. Maya's first priority was to address the toxic culture that had festered within the hotel's management. She wasn't interested in punishing the employees for their behavior. Instead, she wanted to teach them the value of respect, dignity, and professionalism. That meant restructuring how the staff interacted with guests, how they were trained, and how they viewed their roles. She would turn this hotel into a place where everyone, regardless of their appearance, background, or income, was treated with the utmost respect. The first step was a mandatory all-staff meeting that Maya herself led. She had already issued a formal letter to the employees, notifying them that their treatment of guests was under review. By the time the meeting began, the staff was on edge. They knew that things were about to change, but none of them knew how deep those changes would go. Maya entered the conference room with the hotel manager, who had now been reduced to a mere figurehead in her eyes. His hands shook as he fumbled with the papers in front of him. Maya stood at the front of the room, her posture straight and commanding. She made no attempt to soften her words. She wasn't there to be liked. She was there to make sure things improved. "Good morning, everyone." Maya began, her voice firm and unyielding. "I'm sure you all have questions about the changes I'm implementing here, but let me be clear. This hotel will no longer operate under a culture of exclusivity and discrimination. From this day forward, every guest who walks through these doors will be treated with the respect and dignity they deserve, regardless of their appearance, background, or how much money they have in their bank accounts." The silence in the room was thick with tension. Maya's words had a sharpness to them that made it clear this wasn't a mere suggestion. This was a mandate. "Some of you may be uncomfortable with these changes." Maya continued, her gaze sweeping across the room. "You might think that it's impossible to treat every guest with respect, but let me tell you something. Every guest here is valuable and their experience matters. You were hired to serve people, not judge them based on how they look or what they wear. She paused for a moment, letting her words sink in. The room was still. The employees exchanged uncertain glances, but no one dared to speak. They were waiting for what would come next. "I'm also implementing a new training program," Maya said, "effective immediately. Everyone will be required to undergo sensitivity and diversity training. We will make sure that every member of this team understands the importance of inclusivity and how to treat every guest with kindness and respect." She let that hang in the air for a moment, watching the employees' reactions. Some were visibly uncomfortable, while others seemed to be processing the weight of what Maya was saying, but none of them could deny that her authority was undeniable. She wasn't just another wealthy guest, she was the owner, and she was here to change the culture of this hotel. The manager, still standing beside her, shifted uncomfortably but didn't speak up. Maya turned to him, her eyes narrowing slightly. "And as for you," she said, her voice cool but unyielding, "you will work closely with me to make sure these changes are implemented immediately. I expect nothing less than full cooperation from you and the rest of the staff." The manager nodded quickly, his face flushed with embarrassment. He had once believed himself to be in charge, but now, with Maya standing firmly in control, he knew that he was nothing more than an employee, a mere cog in the machine. The rest of the meeting was spent outlining the new policies and procedures Maya was putting in place. She explained how she wanted to revamp the hotel's customer service protocols, focusing on creating a more welcoming environment for all guests, regardless of their status. The staff would now be expected to go above and beyond in their service, treating everyone equally with kindness and ensuring that no guest would ever feel unwelcome again. Over the following weeks, Maya's changes began to take root. The sensitivity and diversity training was intense, forcing employees to confront their biases and reframe how they viewed their roles in serving others. Maya personally oversaw the training, ensuring that the lessons were not just academic, but practical. She wasn't interested in lip service. She wanted lasting change. The new protocols were clear. Every guest, regardless of their appearance, would receive the same level of service. Maya even implemented a no-judgment policy where staff members could no longer comment on or make assumptions about a guest based on their appearance, clothing, or behavior. If they did, they would face immediate disciplinary action. But the changes weren't just about what the employees would do. They were about how they would feel. Maya wanted them to understand the importance of their work, not just as a job, but as an opportunity to make people feel valued and respected. Every interaction was an opportunity to make someone's day better. Maya made sure the staff knew this, and slowly their attitudes began to change. The hotel's guests began to notice the difference too. What had once been a stuffy, judgmental atmosphere began to shift into a more open, welcoming environment. Guests who had once been hesitant to return now felt like they were truly seen. The Grand Oak was no longer a place where people were turned away based on their appearance. It was a place where people from all walks of life could feel comfortable and valued. Maya's transformation of the Grand Oak Hotel wasn't just about making the hotel a more inclusive place, it was about proving a point. She had walked in as a guest who was unjustly turned away, but now she was leaving behind a legacy. She had taken control of the space, forced the management and staff to confront their biases, and ensured that no one would ever feel the sting of humiliation she had experienced. The work wasn't finished. Of course, change was a process, and Maya knew that, but she had set the foundation. The Grand Oak Hotel would never be the same. It had gone from being a place that excluded people to a place that welcomed everyone, and Maya had made sure that it would stay that way. As the days passed, Maya's vision for the Grand Oak Hotel began to take shape. The atmosphere had drastically shifted. No longer was it a place where judgment lurked in the corners, where the staff's unspoken biases influenced how guests were treated. The Grand Oak had transformed into a welcoming, inclusive space where everyone, no matter their appearance or background, was treated with the utmost respect. Maya's first priority was addressing the toxic culture that had been allowed to fester within the hotel's management. She wasn't just interested in making superficial changes. She wanted to ensure that the values of respect and equality were woven into the very fabric of the hotel. This wasn't going to be a simple process, but she was determined to see it through. The first step was overhauling the staff's training. Maya made sure every employee underwent comprehensive sensitivity, training challenging their assumptions and biases. The once reluctant staff began to slowly shift their defensiveness, giving way to understanding. Some of them initially resisted the change, but Maya made it clear that this transformation wasn't optional. It was a necessity for the hotel's future. She didn't stop at training Maya. Also implemented a series of new policies, making inclusivity and customer service a top priority. Every guest, regardless of how they were dressed or how much money they had, would now receive the same level of respect and service. Maya's mantra was simple: every guest is valuable. She pushed the staff to embrace this idea, not just in theory, but in every interaction they had. The hotel's manager, who had once viewed his role with a sense of superiority, was now on the receiving end of Maya's vision. No longer the sole authority, he found himself working closely with Maya to make these changes happen. He'd been humbled, not by anger, but by Maya's steady insistence that real hospitality began with empathy. As Maya guided him through these changes, he slowly transformed from a figurehead to a genuine ally in her mission. The results weren't immediate, but they were undeniable. Guests began to notice the change, often commenting on how much friendlier and more attentive the staff was. Word quickly spread that the Grand Oak wasn't just another luxury hotel. It was a place where everyone was welcomed with warmth and dignity. Guests who had once hesitated to stay because of the exclusivity of the hotel now returned with a renewed sense of comfort, knowing that they would be treated equally. One of the most significant shifts was seen in the hotel's atmosphere. Where once there had been an unspoken divide between the wealthy and the other guests, there was now a sense of unity. The staff's pride in their work grew as they saw the impact of their actions. They knew they were part of something bigger than themselves. No longer were they just serving guests. They were part of a movement toward respect and equality. For Maya, the most gratifying moment came when she overheard a conversation between two longtime employees. "I never thought I'd see the day when we'd treat every guest the same," one said. "But honestly, it feels right. This is how it should have always been." Maya smiled to herself when she heard those words. She knew that the true power of change wasn't in the policies she had written, but in the hearts and minds of the people who worked with her. They had bought into her vision, and now it was a part of the hotel's DNA. The Grand Oak. Hotel had become a place where respect and kindness weren't optional. They were mandatory. It was a beacon of inclusivity in an industry often marked by exclusivity. Maya had succeeded in not only transforming the hotel, but also in challenging the very notion of what it meant to provide luxury. She hadn't just changed a hotel. She had changed the hearts of those who worked there and created a ripple effect that would continue far beyond the hotel's walls. Maya wasn't just the owner of the Grand Oak Hotel. She was the architect of a legacy that would serve as a model for the hospitality industry. Standing in the hotel's lobby one evening, Maya watched as guests checked in with smiles, the staff offering warm greetings. It was everything she had hoped for. The journey hadn't been easy, but it had been worth every step. She had made a difference, not just for herself, but for everyone who would walk through the doors of the Grand Oak Hotel from here on out. Maya stood in the hotel's lobby observing the seamless flow of guests, checking in with smiles and staff members greeting them with genuine warmth. The once cold and judgmental atmosphere had been replaced with one of inclusion and respect. The changes she had fought so hard to implement were no longer just policies on paper. They were now the living, breathing culture of the Grand Oak Hotel. Her phone buzzed in her pocket, interrupting her moment of quiet satisfaction. It was a message from the manager now, a trusted ally in her mission. The subject line read, "Guest feedback, positive reviews." Maya opened the message, scanning through the glowing reviews from recent guests. "Best service I've ever received at a luxury hotel. The staff made me feel like family, not just a customer. Finally, a hotel that treats everyone equally, no matter who they are or where they come from. This is the future of hospitality." Maya smiled as she read the messages. She had known all along that change wasn't going to be easy, but these comments confirmed that she was on the right track. Her vision for the hotel had come to fruition. What had once been an elitist establishment was now a shining example of what true luxury should look like. Luxury, not just in material wealth, but in human decency and respect. The feedback was proof that her efforts had not only reshaped the hotel's reputation, but had also changed the lives of those who worked there. The staff, once wary of her bold ideas, had fully embraced the new culture. They understood now that this transformation wasn't about just doing what was required. It was about living the values that Maya had instilled in them. They were no longer just employees. They were ambassadors of a new kind of luxury, one that prioritized kindness and respect above all else. As Maya made her way through the lobby, she exchanged nods and brief words with the staff members who greeted her with smiles. The hotel felt different, lighter, as though it had shed a heavy burden and was finally living up to its full potential. Maya had worked hard to break down the walls of exclusivity that had once defined this place. Now it was a hotel where people of all backgrounds could feel equally valued. But while Maya took pride in the progress made, she knew that the work couldn't stop here. Transformation wasn't a one-time event. It was an ongoing process. She had set the foundation, but it was up to the staff and the new leadership to continue building on that legacy. Maya had set a new standard, but she couldn't be there forever. She had to ensure that the hotel would continue to thrive and grow in the same direction long after she was gone. That evening, Maya gathered with the hotel's management team for their weekly meeting. She had already met with the staff, but this meeting was different. She wasn't just reviewing progress. She was planning for the future. The changes she had implemented needed to be protected, nurtured, and expanded. There was no turning back now. As we moved forward, Maya began addressing the team. "I want to make sure that the core values we've established are reflected in every single decision we make. We've proven that you can offer luxury without turning people away. This is our new identity, and it's important that we never lose sight of that." The team nodded in agreement, each of them having experienced firsthand the transformation that Maya had orchestrated. They understood that this wasn't just about providing exceptional service. It was about providing service that honored each person's inherent worth, regardless of their social status or appearance. As the meeting drew to a close, Maya felt a sense of fulfillment she hadn't expected. The journey hadn't been without challenges, but it had been worth every moment. The Grand Oak Hotel was no longer just a luxury establishment. It was a beacon of inclusivity, equality, and respect. And Maya knew deep down that this was her true legacy. She wasn't just an owner. She was the one who had changed the game. And that more than anything was what made her proud. We can all learn something from Maya's story. Don't let appearance determine how you perceive someone. Instead of judging based on looks, focus on their inner qualities and value. Each of us has the power to make a difference even through the smallest actions. To create a more just and compassionate society, it starts with treating everyone with respect, no matter what they look like. If this story inspired you, don't forget to share and spread the message. Let's work together to change the world and make it a better place for all.